You know how they say, write your first book and then throw it away? That advice makes a lot more sense now, looking back on the 20 plus books that I've written. Not published, written, as in sat down with an idea, rough drafted that idea until I had enough stuff to make a book, wrote that book, revised that book, and then put it into that magical folder where books go to sleep until I want to look. That's what I'm talking about when I say like I wrote a book. So flashback to the yonder year of 2015, right? 10 years ago. We're going back. I was a very young author. I was a baby author. Like, let's not be afraid to use that term for someone who is just starting out, who doesn't know how to be an author, who doesn't know, all the stuff that goes into being an author. They are just starting out on their dream journey of being an author. And it is perfectly fine to be a baby author. It is perfectly fine. We all have been there. Every single author who has ever authored started out not knowing anything. And I think there's kind of this thing, the word escapes me for what word I want, but it's the thing that when people say baby author, some people get offended. Don't. It's fine to be a baby author. We were all baby authors once. I still feel like a baby author sometimes. But anyway, so flashback 2015, little BB Morgan is sitting at her desk typing up her first book, right? It's me. Also, I'm me, BB Morgan, Beatrice B. Morgan, that's me. For clarification, that is me. I'm talking about myself. So I'm sitting there, I'm working on my first book, the book that would eventually become Devil's Blood is what I named it. Going back to that piece of advice, the write your first book and throw it away. Yeah, I didn't listen to that advice because I thought my book, that first book that I was writing, was the best thing since sliced bread. No kidding. I thought it was going to be like the next big thing. I thought it was so good. Agents were going to be knocking down my front door to offer me contracts for it. All these inflated dreams, nonsense. They don't do that. That doesn't happen. And it didn't happen. Spoiler alert. That book didn't do very well. Of course, I had no concept of marketing. I had no budget for marketing. I was working part-time at a library for like $11 an hour. I was broke, all right? I had just graduated college. I was trying to find a job while, you know, living in this fantasy world that, oh, I'm going to write books and they're going to make me a bunch of money and I'm going to be able to go, live in a cabin in the woods by myself and my computer and just write books all day. That's still kind of a one of the, what do they call it, pipeline dreams, where it's probably not going to happen, but it might happen. And that's kind of the dream I'm working toward, is being able to be a full-time writer and go live in the woods somewhere by myself, away from people. Oh, my train derailed. My first book, mistakes that I made. I made so many mistakes with that first book. I made mistakes with like my first like 5 books. There was something I saw, I think it was TikTok, where an author was talking about how she had heard the piece of advice that keep on writing, blah blah, but your 5th book will be the one that sells. And her thing was, well, she's only written 2 books, so she needed to go get more books written. And I was sitting there thinking about this, and like, I'm trying to figure out what my 5th book was, because I wrote 3 books in the Devil's Blood series, and I wrote that not very good pirate romance steampunk thing. So my 5th book, the 5th book that I published, my 5th book, my pinky book, was Stars and Bones. And that is the book that got me my small press. So, yeah, in my case, my 5th book was the one that got me a little bit more attention. And I hadn't queried that book very long. And granted, I was terrible at writing queries. I'm still terrible at writing queries. It's just so. I'm better at writing queries now than I was, but still. Anyway, moving on. So it was technically my 5th book that got me contract. I say contract because it's with a small press. It's still technically a publisher, contract, blah blah. Where was I going with that? I was going somewhere with it. Coffee break. I go back to the point of this video, which was all the mistakes that I made with that first book, with that first several books, but mainly with this very first book that I did, Devil's Blood. Um, the first mistake, and the kind of the one that sticks out to me the most, is that I did not get this book edited. First of all, I could not afford editing. I was barely making, $100 a week. There was no way to be able to save up for editing. It would take me years. So it didn't happen. And, of course, in my mind, in my baby author mind, I had a degree in English. I could edit a book because to me, I was thinking of like spelling errors and grammar. But an editor, a good editor, a good book editor does way, way more than just look at your grammar. They're going to be looking at pacing, at plot, at character, consistency, all of these things. So, a good book editor is well worth the money. But I didn't really understand that at the time, nor did I have the money at the time. So I did not get my book edited professionally. I did all of the editing myself. And granted, looking back on that very first draft, the one that I hit publish on and pushed out to Amazon for the world to see, that thankfully a very, very small portion of the book population saw it or read it. But that very first edition that I pushed out was not good. It wasn't good. Like, I'm not saying that, like, subjectively. I'm saying that objectively, because I went back later and I tried to read it and I was like, man, this is not very good. I had this moment. I remember the moment. I was in a hotel room because I had gone somewhere for a job interview, and it was my attempt to get out of tiny town America. And I had gone. Really? Maybe I'm mixing two memories here. Well, anyway, I was sitting in a hotel room, okay? It was a hotel room somewhere for something. And I had brought this copy of Devil's Blood. Not this one, I'm not holding anything, it's imaginary. But I had brought a copy of Devil's Blood with me to read in order to get motivation going to get into the next book. I didn't make it a chapter into that book. I was so distraught at how bad it was. Just the writing itself was not good. And so that kind of started me on this campaign of, I need to rewrite this book. So I did. I have actually rewritten it 5 times, I think. I think the one that's currently on Amazon is like the 5th edition. Because, yeah, that's 5 times I have gone back through that book to rewrite it. And the story is the same, but it's just me going back and making the writing a little better, a little bit more cohesive, taking out some of the redundant words, explaining things better, putting in some more world building. I know I tweaked the world building a lot because I didn't choose a clear world to set this story in. No, I went with like a steampunk fantasy world that, in my mind, was very similar to like the world and technology level of like the Full Metal Alchemist. I was not very good at making that clear. Like that, I'm sorry, my hair is just ugh. I didn't put anything in it, so now it's just like an 80s fuzzball that I've just attached to my head. I also tried to put on lipstick, and then I didn't like it once I looked at myself in OBS. So I tried to take it off, but it's still kind of there. I decided it didn't really matter. Yeah, anyway, so I went back and I revised Devil's Blood multiple times. Now, here, 10 years later, thinking about it, here, let me put the arms down so I can, there we go, that's actually more comfortable. So I can do this. Thinking about my writing style now versus my writing style back in 2015, I don't think there was anything that any editor could have done to that book to make it better, because it was a writing style. It was my writing style that wasn't good enough at the time. And I have encountered a handful of indie books that read that same way. It's not that they're bad or that the books themselves are bad or that the authors don't have talent, but it's that writing talent, that writing skill is just not where it needs to be. I try to be real nice, like don't leave like scathing reviews of these books. They're like, man, this book really is not very good. But I generally just quietly DNF those because I don't want the author to know that I didn't like it. And it's not that I didn't like it, but it's just I read differently than I did than I usually or hold on, let me restart that sentence. Let me back up and restart that sentence. I read differently, I think, as an author than readers who are just readers because I'm reading to experience the book. And I'm reading to kind of experience how another author is putting together their story, how they let the plot unfold, how they build characters, how they, spoon out the character arc. I'm reading to learn at the same time I'm reading to be entertained. And it makes reading, I was going to say it makes reading less fun, but it doesn't really because I don't think I can go into a book just for entertainment anymore. I don't think I can. I've tried and it just doesn't last. Like I'm reading to improve my writing at the same time. So aside from my skills as a writer just not being quite what they needed to be in order to put a well-written book out there in the published world, I also made a crucial mistake that everyone tells you not to do, but I did it anyway. And that is, I did not get a professionally looking cover. No. I, being the poor baby author that I was, thinking that this book was the best thing since Harry Potter and it would absolutely destroy the market with how good it was, I made my cover myself. And I am not a designer by any means. I am very, very comfortable with giving someone else money so that they can use their design skills to make things. I am not a visual creative person, all right? I can't design things. I can tell you what colors look nice next to each other, but when it comes to like using all these effects and making covers look nice, that is not my forte, and I am perfectly fine with it not being my forte. It is other people's forte, and they can do their thing and I can do my thing, which is the book part. But I made my cover myself through CreateSpace's create a cover thing. It didn't look good. Okay. It didn't look bad, but it was not good. Like I've seen much worse covers. Like the covers, where it looks like they just went into like MS Paint and like threw a crown and then threw a dagger up on their cover and boom, look done. Like no, it looks like there's no cohesion. It looks like it's just two clip arts sticking there. It wasn't good, all right? This original cover for Devil's Blood, it wasn't good. It wasn't pretty. And I'm not going to show you. Goodreads does remember everything, and that original cover is there somewhere. Again, I was very, very poor. So I put this cover up there, put this book out there in the world. And again, I spent as little money as possible on this book. I'm having a hard time not looking at myself. What if I put my notes up here right in front of my face so that I can't cheat. But so I made my own cover and I published this book. And again, I spent as little money as possible putting this book out there. And looking back, I'm kind of glad I didn't spend a lot of money because I did not make much money back from that book. And I don't know how many copies of the book my mother bought or has bought because she has forgotten that she has bought it. And this is why one of my pieces of advice for, young authors just coming into the author space and wanting to be an author, don't be afraid to just go through Amazon. Don't be afraid to, make your own cover and canvas. Don't be afraid of like not getting your first book like developmentally edited for $13,000. And I'm aware it doesn't cost $13,000. That is just the number that popped into my head. But it feels like a lot of money, okay? And don't be afraid of like, using the free ISBN through Amazon. Because odds are this first book is not going to make a lot of money back. Like, especially if you just want to, throw a book up there and just to see what happens. And of course, there are people that will adamantly disagree with me, because if you use their ISBN, that means Amazon technically owns the ISBN, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can go buy your own ISBNs for however much money, $150 a piece they cost, however much money they cost. You can spend hundreds of dollars on a cover, and you can spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on editing. You can do that. You can pump as much money into your book as possible. But however, understand that the odds of you making all of that money back on your debut book as an indie author are very slim. Not impossible, slim. Like, I still have not made my money back on those books. Or I don't even think I've made my money back from all the promotions that I've done for Stars and Bones, because I pumped a lot of money into it last year, and I did make a pretty penny, but it was not as much money as I spent. But hold on, my train is going in a different direction than I wanted it to. I wanted to be more concise with this video. Mistakes that I made as a baby author, specifically on my first book. That's where I'm going. Cover, the editing, my own skill, really the three biggest points. But to bring it back to what the piece of advice that I had mentioned in the very first part, which was to write your book, like specifically, write your first book, get all those ideas down, throw it away. Put it in a box in the top of your closet, leave it. Hold on. Let's go back to the. Let's rewind here. The best writing advice that I have heard within the past several years has been to always be looking at what you're writing. Focus on your writing. Write your book, and if that book doesn't, sell very well, if that book isn't the book that lands you an agent, move on to your next book. Because maybe that book will be the book that gets you, those readers, or it goes viral on whatever platform you're on, or it catches the eye of an agent. Always be looking at what book you're doing next. Always, move into your next book. Because let's say you do this and you're on your 7th book, right? And you self-published that 7th book and it gains you a bunch of readers, or it gets you that agent and they're like, well, what else do you have? You've got 6 other books that you can work on. Your backlog, your backlist, I guess, if you don't already publish those. That piece of advice, that write your first book, throw it away because it'll be garbage, makes a lot more sense to me now, here in 2025, than it did when I first heard it. And in his lecture series, Brandon Sanderson talked about how some pieces of writing advice might be excellent for you now, but it's not going to be good for you in a couple years, or when you're just starting out, or at any point in your writing career. Some pieces of advice might not work for you at that time, but then it might work for you years later. And I think this is one of those pieces of advice, because now it makes sense. And it didn't make sense 10 years ago. And it's just wild to think how much my writing has changed in 10 years. But I have devoted, my free time. I've spent so many of my weekends writing and trying to get books done and working on my craft. And it's absolutely wild to see how far my writing has come since that first book back in 2015 to the books that I'm writing now. It is wild. It is insane. I know 10 years sounds like a really, really, really long time. I'm going to be completely honest. It doesn't feel like it's been a long time. Well, it does, but it doesn't. Like, I don't feel like I should be 10 years older. I don't feel like I went to college in between now and then. I did. Got a master's degree. Here we are, working in a job that doesn't need a master's degree. My best piece of advice for anyone wanting to become an author, or who is in that baby author phase, do not give up. Do not, write your first book, decide it's crap, and then just stop. Because, I'll never be better than I am now. Yes, you will. Keep at it. Keep learning. Keep working on your craft. Keep writing. Keep reading. And you will improve. You will get better. Because if you stop before you write that bestseller, you'll never get there. You'll never write that bestseller. But if you keep going, if you keep writing, statistically, your odds of getting a bestseller go up. That's what I keep telling myself. So thanks for watching this slightly more organized Author Wednesday, Writer Wednesday, because alliteration. But thank you for watching or listening, whatever. Doesn't really bother me either way. But if you're just listening, you don't get to see this weird hot mess express that is my hair today. But thanks for listening. Stay tuned for more excerpts, pieces. I was just gonna say pieces of my writing journey, things that I'm working on, books that I've read, or just things that I see in the writing community that annoy me. Because there are plenty of those. And we'll see you in the next Writer Wednesday.